Time for another DraftScience video presentation. To the future, really. Because the present just can't handle the truth. It's just a fact. Present humans just aren't ready to recognize, oh, we've made a few mistakes, we have to fix those, blah, 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 blah. And it's just a sad fact that they're still blighted by traditional religious type behavior, devotion, waving their little science flags, la 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 la. Knowing that it's performance art, and frankly, somebody's going to do it better. It's going to happen. It's just not a perfect device yet. You can't just plug it into a computer and have it give you the answers, because you don't have the foundations right. It's just a fact. And when you do have it right, then we won't have to do the thinking anymore, because then you'll have the right pieces to put into the computer and just have it synthesize the whole thing. Synthesize the next invention. But anyway, a whole different subject, really. I'll just read a couple of comments and then move on to maybe photons for fun. A little bit of a change of pace, but we'll see how it goes. Matter Dirk. I'm not sure if this helps the argument. It won't. But we do. Evidence is going to help the argument. So go out and find evidence, experiments. And the sad truth is you can't find any. Can't find any of these simple experiments because, frankly, I think part of the reason is because physics doesn't want to have to explain their paradoxes. But anyway. But we do consider, but do we consider the Newton's cradle? I don't even know what that means. Of course, I've mentioned it a few times. I've shown it a couple of times in videos. So, yeah, it's sort of relevant, but it's kind of simple. It can only tell you so much. It's got a different setup, so whatever. So probably not. Yeah, well, the difference in the setup really doesn't mean anything. It's really just one ball hitting another ball, technically. In some respects. And then if you double the mass, then you double how many balls go out the other side. But it's just not that interesting in some respects. Anyway, so probably not. But the answer they give can be compared to the possibility of one swinging metal ball hitting the rest with so much force that two balls bounce off the opposite side. No, because you're getting it wrong again. You're not understanding that this is just made out of two things, mass and velocity. And you wouldn't say, well, if I roll the cue ball 10 miles an hour, it can't stop and give all of its energy to the other ball. Well, of course it can. And I can do it at 40 miles an hour. I can do it at 100 miles an hour. As long as the two masses are the same masses, I'm going to get the same outcome. So, so if you throw the ball harder, the only way you can give it more force is to throw it harder. Unless you say, well, I'm going to give it more mass. Now, if you give it more mass, the problem is it can't give all of its momentum to another ball because it can only give the velocity portion can only grow a certain amount, and that's it. It can't give more velocity than it has. So if you use a heavier mass, it can only give the peak velocity it has to anything it pushes, so to speak. So if you just think of it in the momentum terms, in terms of the fact that the thing has to push the other thing, then all of this becomes a little bit understandable in the sense that something going 30 miles an hour, even if it has the ability to go 30 miles an hour all day long because it has a gasoline engine pushing it, it doesn't matter. It can only make something go 30 miles an hour. It can't make it go 60 miles an hour. You have to use some trick. You have to use a lever or pulleys or some other mechanism to amplify the velocity. But you can't just bang into it and make it go 70 miles an hour. So in your example, more force would be more velocity. So you're saying, you're not specific. If you increase the mass, then you can knock the two off. If you make one ball twice as heavy as the regular balls and then swing it in, it'll knock two off the other side. But you can't do anything about the problem that it doesn't have. It can't give any of the balls extra velocity. It can only give the velocity it has. So obviously if you swing it in harder, it's just going to make one ball pop out the other side harder, faster. it'll just duplicate those results. So anyway, I'm just saying. I think I'm shooting myself in the foot with that analogy, though. Well, then sort of maybe you should type it, frankly. But anyway, my brain needs to think more. Again, the arguments are kind of simple, right? I mean, we've cut it down to something, one half of these people are saying momentum isn't conserved and kinetic energy is, and the other half are saying the opposite. So one half are basically saying that if I compress a spring a certain amount, it matters how much weight I put on the spring. If I put a heavy weight on the spring, I get less energy. I get more momentum somehow, and less energy, which doesn't make much sense, and all the way down. And clearly the argument is this momentum worked 350 years ago and it still works. And the fact is you're going to get the same momentum because the spring compression is essentially momentum. You've stored momentum in the spring. It will give back the momentum. So as long as you don't put a brick wall or a feather on the spring, something lighter than the spring's maximum velocity, something that can't be, that's so light, the energy necessary to make it move as fast as the spring is so slight that it's less than the spring's total energy, so it can't possibly put the energy into the feather again because the feather will leave before it finishes. So unless you do those two extremes, the spring is a very consistent source of a momentum, and it will give proportional momentum. So if I have the same spring compression, I put a twice as massive object on, it'll go 1/2 the velocity. Now they're saying this isn't true. So you'd think this experiment would be done somewhere. I mean, it's not that sophisticated, not that, shouldn't be that problematic. But anyway, we don't have the experiment. So I've read your comment. I'm going to delete it just because it is kind of just confusing. It doesn't say anything. It doesn't clarify anything. Asking more questions is fine, but we haven't got answers to these simple questions. So what good is it asking any questions? We have no foundation for which to argue from. There's no common premise. They're saying things that I would assert can't possibly and aren't true. And I can't prove it because, no one's done the experiment. But I have given indication of it in terms of things like the Professor Lewin video. I want to do that. I don't know why it does this. I go back and it goes to the videos instead of the comments. Just some strange little YouTube bug. Anyway, so yeah, we don't need more questions. We need more answers. We need more evidence. So something, like I said, so we can have premises. There's no axioms. There's no premises here for a conversation because they just keep changing the ground rules. So there's no, I argue one guy, he changes them to this, and then the other guy changes them exactly the opposite. I mean, it's just horse shit. It's just impossible to argue in that environment. So as long as the Professor Lewin video means nothing to these people, there's not much to do. Alright, so in that vein, Troll left this comment. The kinetic energy formula is used in everything engineers do ever. So just a statement. There's absolutely no proof of it. That it is and that it's ever used in any kind of way that could possibly matter. They'll say something like, oh, the 4 pounds of hydrogen has 768 billion joules in it. Who cares? I mean, it doesn't matter as long as they're going to have an inflated number for the joules of energy. They can have inflated numbers for everything going out. So it doesn't have any significance to being able to do these relative comparisons, and they're just relative comparisons in the end. So it doesn't matter in some sense. You can have the wrong understanding and get right answers with it, but in some cases it's going to be critically flawed, like if you're storing your energy as velocity and you have the dopey notion that bullets give you 1,000 times more storage of energy, well, you're going to be out of luck when you try to collect that energy. So it's not going to do you much good then. And frankly, there's just no evidence of it. Like I said, NASA does pretty explicit about saying it uses Newton's mechanics, and clearly mv squared is not Newton's mechanics. So you just have to be a complete, You have to deny history overtly. You have to be hostile to facts to claim that mv squared is part of Newton's physics when it was clearly an attack against Newton, its entire creation. So it's just such a perversion of the truth. I mean, it really is as bad as saying Einstein invented entanglement. He invented it as a joke, as a way of mocking your physics. Shit. Alright, anyway, you have no evidence to back up your claim, so I have provided evidence. You've provided zero. So the comparison, yes, I've only been able to find a couple of videos that illustrate some of this. I played the Julian Sumner video, you know, different ones where overt statements are being made by rather competent physicists stating certain claims that you can witness to some extent. I mean, they've done some experiments, so you get to see some of it happening. You've provided nothing. Zero. I haven't got a single, there's not a single physics video I've been linked to giving me any kind of counter evidence. Besides maybe the bowling video, right, which didn't have a single experiment in it. Didn't have any, it's just complete claims, no evidence of anything at all. So you have no evidence. You're the one with no evidence. Let's just understand that. You haven't proven that springs produce different momentums. Where did you prove that? Where did you show me an experiment demonstrating that different momentums are created by the same spring compression? There's no evidence of this statement. Anyway, to say that physicists and engineers are all lying. So you said, no, I've overtly stated now, let's be clear, I'm saying they're stupid. I'm saying you are stupid, okay? You're an ignorant, obnoxious religious kook, and you clearly prove it because you never acknowledge the history. You keep slandering Newton and saying this is Newton's physics when it clearly isn't. Your derivatives are moronic in the sense you're using dot products as real products. They're supposed to be just directional indicators, and you're sitting there multiplying them in the equation. So you're committing overt cheats in the sense that in one formula, dot products are for display purposes only, just to tell you which direction it's going. And then when you want to, you'll just sit there and make it a real product. The dot means really multiply. It doesn't mean dot. It means multiply. All right. So, I mean, fuck you. It's just a bullshit. So anyway, I've never said they are lying. What I have overtly said is they're wrong. They made mistakes. Benjamin Franklin didn't lie when he put plus and minus on the wrong poles. He made a mistake. And I clearly pointed out the mistake made here was they all fell for these stupid clay experiments. They had this one aberrant experiment, right? They went out looking for the aberrant experiments because they were really making a claim against something that was well established by Newton. Newton predicted Halley's Comet. He predicted things. He had established the veracity of his theory. And they're going against that. So they had to try to find experimental evidence that did something else. And it's no different than Ken Wheeler holding up the ferrocell and saying, see, light is bent by magnetism. Do you think light is bent by magnetism? You see, you don't answer any of these questions. I mean, we don't have any idea who the fuck you are and what kind of deluded nonsense you believe and why you believe it. So there's no context to these empty statements you make about this bullshit. So again, there was never any statement where I made any statement implying any kind of conspiracy at all except stupidity. Okay, obnoxious arrogance. Physicists have their head way up their own asses. They say shit that is just so fucking idiotic. I mean, look at this new stupid experiment they did. You know, they all these, there's like 3 or 4 videos. This new G4 blah 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 muon experiment proves blah 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 blah. It's nothing experiment. It's a repeat of an experiment they already did, and they spent, for whatever reason, a preposterous amount of money to move a magnet across the country, a gigantic frickin' magnet. They moved it across the country to duplicate the very same experiment that was done in the other location. And then they claim, oh, well, you have a little bit better technology we're going to put on top of it. Why don't you leave the magnet where it was and build it where it was? Why? Because of some bullshit money nonsense, right? One university got the money, the other one didn't, or some other kind of horseshit. Huge waste of money moving the magnet for no good reason at all. I mean, you talk about bullshit science, and then they had to make it seem like, oh, these results mean something. No, the results don't mean a damn thing. They're just as confusing as the original results. And they're making it sound like, wow, we got new physics. We don't got anything new. They found out one of their predictions was wrong. Oh, well, what a big surprise. And it's a silly prediction anyway. It has to do with the vacuum of space producing noise that's making muons jiggle. I mean, the whole theory is bullshit. Anyway, that's a sidetrack, sorry. But again, it's not about lying. It's about being silly and obviously stupid. I mean, mv squared is obviously stupid. The history points to stupid. Can you give me one quote? All right, one fucking quote from the entire 300-year history. So there's 350 years of history. Can you give me one stinking quote where somebody made a brilliant argument in defense of mv squared? You know, one that wasn't as stupid as, well, light things go 4 times higher in gravity. And, fast things go into clay deeper. Besides that, do you have any good physics to defend it? Any good physics statements? Any good physics reasoning? No, you have nothing. I have absolutely nothing to argue with. You've put nothing on the table except your arrogance and said, I believe it. Well, that sucks as an argument, shithead. All right. So, again, another premise that's just a lie. I'm not arguing they're liars. I'm arguing they're idiots, obviously. I think Leibniz was an idiot, a religious kook, frankly. Okay, that did steal everybody's science. He didn't do any original physics. He just stole shit from everybody else. He was a compulsive thief. He was a shoplifter. I mean, his mv squared was essentially stolen from Huygens. Anyway, and then the whole silly French connection with Voltaire and the woman, and it's all bullshit. It's all just nonsense physics. All right, anyway, lying about these equations is to make an extraordinary claim. Well, it's not my claim. So go ahead and prove that calling somebody an idiot is an extraordinary, calling a human being an idiot is an extraordinary claim. So demonstrate where calling a human being a fucking idiot is an extraordinary claim, because frankly you prove it every fucking day. Every fucking, go look out the goddamn window, okay? Humans are fucking idiots. They have solar panels on fucking roofs. Oh, fuck. All right. The burden of proof lies solely on your side. Yeah, so isn't that an interesting way to do physics? I don't have to prove anything. You have to prove I'm wrong. Oh, that sounds exactly like religion. Somehow I have to prove the fabulistic God doesn't exist. Right? They don't have to prove his existence. I have to prove the non-existence of the fantasy character. The burden's on me to disprove your non-evidence theory. Oh, isn't that fucking amazing? So you just profile yourself. You are a profile in religious cowardice. Okay, I mean, just the weaseliest kind of argument you could possibly make, that somehow I have to demonstrate that your fantasy fucking fabulistic energy is real. That isn't real, right? When you haven't demonstrated with a single solitary piece of evidence. I said to you, go ahead, show me one experiment where you collect this extra energy, this mv squared bullshit, or show me one fucking experiment where you show how momentum fails to get into the lighter objects. Somehow I can't put momentum into lighter objects. Show one or the other, or, shut the fuck up. Come on. I have to prove your fable wrong. Oh, amazing. It is amazing, frankly. It's amazing that people can be this clueless, this fucking out of touch with any kind of obligation to make a sensible counter argument. This is not a sensible proof of why I'm wrong, why it's unreasonable for me to somehow think this fable that you're telling me is somehow not perfectly true, like every piece of evidence around me says so. No, every piece of evidence doesn't say so. I look at the bowling ball rolling down the alley and I don't see 11 100 joules, or 2048, or 1024. Yeah, I see like 290. How many pounds of energy do I see? Yeah, I see like 290 pounds of energy rolling down the alley. I don't see these preposterous numbers that your fably little fairy princess MV squared theory comes up with. Again, I go back to the spaceship analogy. They can't deal with the fact that it's a duality. You know, they're claiming that somehow the same force doesn't shoot a dime from the spaceship, okay, at 1,000 miles an hour, and a 2-kilogram bottle, okay, only 1 mile an hour. They're claiming that isn't true, right? And do they have any evidence to prove that it isn't true? No. Zero. Do they have any evidence to prove that any NASA engineer didn't use momentum to land on the moon? No. They just claim it over and over again. Claims, no evidence. All right, so I will move on to the next feature. Yeah. Alright, well, this is kind of a trivial, simplistic video. Might have played it in the past. Somebody linked me to it. At least it's a something, right? I've got some other video where some guy actually, does the drop the butter thing. But anyway,
if I say the word energy, what is the first thing that comes to your mind? Maybe a scene from Dragon Ball Z?
Yeah, whatever. So let's see, all this cartoon crap by some asshole called Badzilla. We need science by Badzilla. Oh, fuck.
Or even a Drake song. But today, I'm talking about energy in joules, as in physics. A little while ago, I made a cool video titled, How Much Force is 1 Newton?
What a dream on cool video. Anyway, we'll move on from his advertisement for his own shitty video.
Welcome back. Now we can continue. Now, what is a joule? A simple definition would be, it is the energy exerted when a force of 1 Newton is applied over 1 meter of...
Yeah, so you drop it 1 meter or you lift it 1 meter. Now, you know that gravity is, a conservative force. So, lifting something is the same as dropping something. It's the same energy. The energy gravity applies to pushing it down is the same as the energy required to lift it up. So you could write that sentence exactly the opposite. Well, I mean, even the way it's written, frankly, is okay because it's saying applied over 1 meter. It's not telling you which way you're going.
Distance. This is named after James Joule. Mathematically, we can write that as Newton meter, or kilograms times meter squared times second to the negative.
Totally unnecessary to do any of that crap once you have a unit. It's a relative comparable unit. You can establish that something has twice as much or 4 times as much or 10 times as much.
So how much is that 1 joule of energy in a real life example that we can all relate to? Consider this block of butter right here. It weighs 100 grams, which means it exerts a force of 1 Newton.
Right, so a Newton is a weight. Clearly, the weight of the stick of butter. It's applying 1 Newton of force on the table. Right? It's a weight, clearly.
On that table. Now, if I apply an opposite force of 1 Newton, lifting it up.
Right. So he got half of the experiment right. Right? So, yeah. Well, that's a lot harder to calculate, isn't it? How much energy did it take? Because, frankly, the whole time you're lifting it, you're also holding it against gravity. So, frankly, you're going to use a lot more calories if you lift it slowly. Like, if you take all day to lift it, you'll be exhausted. Okay, exhausted. It's a stick of butter, but you're going to be exhausted. Okay, but you'll be holding the weight against gravity, and you'll be doing work the whole time. So, it's really a stupid way to calculate in the sense that the amount of force will change with how fast you lift it. So, if you lift it in 1 second... okay, that would probably be a more relevant to all of those units you showed before, right? So here they show all the units, second squared, this, there, blah, blah, and they don't even pay attention to the fact that, well, the rule is you have to lift it in a certain amount of time to have an actual Newton of energy used. But again, I would still argue that you're still also just holding the original Newton of weight. So it's not just about your energy. Now, releasing it would be so much simpler. So he's got it up in the air. He's got it at 1 meter. Just let it go. And what it does when it hits, that's a joule. But no, we don't get that experiment.
Off that table until it reaches the height of 1 meter, right there. Then we can say that action of lifting took 1 joule of energy to accomplish.
Yes, not if you take more than a second to do it.
It is really that simple.
No, it really wasn't.
That is 1 joule of energy. If this guy pushes this cart with 1 Newton force, when he reaches 1 meter...
So obviously 1 Newton would be just the pressure of the weight of a 100 grams. So it's not very much pressure, obviously. So it would take decades to go, you couldn't get very far on a Newton. Look at the way he draws balls on the men. I mean, isn't that just so badzilla of him?
Meter distance, right there, that is 1 joule of energy, regardless of how long it took him to get there. The only thing you should remember...
Right, so regardless of how long, because he's not going against gravity, but the fact is he is going against gravity, because if he goes slow, gravity is applying more friction, because he's in the gravity longer. So it will be more energy. So, I mean, the real physics just lost in all this superficial mush. You know, there's real physics, and then there's this, let's generalize and make it cartoony for human consumption. And it does ruin a lot of real physics.
Remember, is I'm assuming that this force is applied on this horizontal x-axis. If the force is applied...
So yes, you're combining forces. If you're going tangential to gravity, then you're combining 2 different forces. So what?
At an angle, then the force usually needs to be decomposed into 2 vectors, and I won't get into that right now in this video.
Why even mention it?
This is why it's expressed in...
You got a simplistic, dopey video. Why just throw in some sort of dodge about, well, it gets more complicated when the vectors aren't straight lines. What duh? Everybody can figure that out.
Newton meter. 1 Newton applied over 1 meter. That is the definition of 1 joule. It's real.
So he said it again, the same thing. And the definition of a joule is that sound right there. That's a joule of energy. And I'd say it's about a pound. You drop a 1/4 pound, 1 meter, it's going to hit with about a pound of weight. That's my guess. Well, we'll find out. Somebody someday will drop a stick of butter on a scale and we'll get to know the answer. I don't have a scale that can do that kind of, measuring in time in terms of pounds. All I have is a step-on scale, and it's digital, and it won't give me, it already averages everything, so I can't get maximum weights out of it. So the trick is you have to do it more than once, and you just go for whatever the biggest reading is you get on the scale. That's probably the closest one to the truth. Anyway,
really as simple as that. So it is very, very little energy. This is why you will see it.
Who says you? I mean, it's only billions and billions. Actually, maybe 100 billion. It's probably more than that. Molecular events, let alone calculating it in terms of how many electron events. Trillions. So, not really little by what comparison, of course.
Expressed usually in kilojoules or more than that. I want to thank you for watching. Give this video
Oh, God. Fuck. Well, as a receiver of the watch, I'm not very impressed, frankly. Cartoon physics. And you just messed it up. Because what should have occurred to you, what you should have explained to your audience is, obviously, momentum is weight. Obviously. That's what energy is, a kind of weight. And you can just measure its weight. You can measure something's energy by just measuring how much it weighs. Now, some things are hard to measure, but the fact is, you want to know how much a tank is going rolling across the ground, blah, 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 blah. Put a big giant scale in front of it and have it hit it, and you'll know how many joules of energy it has. If you can have a funnel so you can collect all the broken pieces. But anyway, So fuck. I mean, so what am I arguing? There's a conspiracy to be stupid? No, humans are just stupid. That's the argument. They're club members, and they don't really care about their leadership having anything called integrity or decency or being right about anything, as long as they're wearing the right color, and as long as they're not fucking their girlfriend, everything's fine. Now, if they're screwing somebody else's girlfriend, it's okay, but not theirs. I mean, it's just, come on. Oh, it's a big surprise. Humans are stupid. No, it's not. That's not a conspiracy theory. Humans are stupid, not a conspiracy theory. All right. They don't. Yeah, they don't do anything right. Frankly, that's not in their Bible. Doing things the right way. It doesn't occur to them that should be their priority. Oh, I should do things right and efficiently? Oh, yeah, no, it doesn't even occur to them. I shouldn't fucking shit in other people's living rooms? Okay, they're not quite that bad, but they're really, really close. There's some asshole next door, right? Some retarded repairman, right? It's been working on these trivial little projects on a house they're selling. And like 100,000 hours, and and you can't even tell he's accomplished anything. Anyway, he's got this fucking car, this piece of shit, and it's leaking fluids all over the fucking newly paved road. It's made a mess. The whole road is scarred by all his leaky fluids. I mean, what kind of fucking idiot does this? I mean, it rots the fucking asphalt. It's a brand new paved road. It's all pretty and everything. And he's turning it into fucking shit. I mean, the examples of human stupid is so all over the place. They just can't figure out what this, it's just too complicated for them. Fuck. Yeah. Anyway. Shit. Okay. So, yeah, that's enough of that. Alright, so I'll take a pause and we'll go to photons. We'll do a little bit of photons. Alright, I'm back very quickly. Okay, so this was a Quora question somebody asked that was sort of interesting. Do photons stop existing after they transfer their energy to other particles, i.e. electrons? And all kinds of wacky physics answers. I mean, this one guy's got his ass so, his head so far, he's got his ass so he's wearing it as a perfect hat. It's an ass hatter. He's got his ass as a hat. And, it's all of this horse shit about the annihilation and unannihilation and all the fucking de Broglie bullshit, just complete nonsense. Anyway, so this was my comment. Only viewed 7 times. So in 2 days, it's only been viewed 7 times. So I guess I'm not going to have to worry about responding to anybody. So anyway, just for the record, not all humans have been duped by the pretentious arrogance of physicists. First, fact is, conventional physics has no consistent theory regarding what a photon is, let alone how it behaves. And it's just demonstrate. Every physicist will give you a different answer about what a photon is. They really have no clue. Einstein said 2 years before he died, I've been studying photons for 50 years and I haven't improved my understanding one iota. They really have no clue. And yet they talk as if they have a great answer. Anyway, unfortunately, they're not easy to observe, so information comes from indirect sources, sometimes very indirect. So that's the catch. We're talking about something we can only talk about in theory because we're never going to have a videotape of photons. Okay, there's no way to videotape them. There's no energy we can apply to them to get a reflection to see where they are. Can't use sonar, can't use radar, can't use anything to see a photon. All right, based on my many years of analysis of that evidence, I provide this description. A photon is an event. Unlike a clump, okay, a photon is a composite object. So even if you believe in a wave theory, you can still play along. Yeah, so when they say the word photon, it doesn't mean anything because the photon is obviously a frequency. A frequency has to hit you more than once. You have to get hit by more than one wave before you can know what the frequency of the waves are. Photons aren't quanta, so when they say they're quantizing a photon, they're thinking about it all wrong because the photon isn't the light quanta. No, the bits inside the photon are the light quanta. Okay. Or small bits of momentum. The frequency of a photon is the distance or period between the bits of momentum. Really nice explanation, I think. The polarization, so I had to throw it in, but I didn't want to make it too complicated. The polarization, spread of the bits. So I don't know if somebody's going to understand that, right? I mean, I've sort of given the idea of bits in an order, but the spread sort of just means this way. So the fact is the frequency is very fixed, but the spread is also, they're out of alignment with each other. So they're moving in parallel. They have specific distances between them, but they're not in the same space this way. That's the polarization. Anyway, the frequency of a photon, okay, so the polarization, spread of the bits of a photon is very large. So the point I'm making is that this is something physicists know. And yet they keep saying things like the photon interacts with the electron. Well, how does something that's got a polarization that's 1,000 atoms interact with something so tiny? It's not even close to a reasonable theory. Perhaps 1,000 atoms of distance. So they know the polarization is big, huge, even gigantic. And there's no way that something 1,000 atoms of fog could affect something 1,000,000 times smaller than an atom. How does it do that? All right, therefore, it is very unrealistic to think one of these objects as a whole object could interact with a tiny electron. So that's a simple argument. It's unrealistic. Come on. There's probably a better answer. Whole photon hitting electron just really can't make any sense because the photon, even though the energy is small, the size is gigantic. The better story is only one bit of a photon interacts with an electron. So it's just one piece of the photon. One dot of the ... pattern. So that you could sort of understand. There's a pattern of thing, and only one of the things hits a particular electron. Okay, as the bits interact with different electrons, so each one of the little bits is going to hit a different electron, the electron momentum is combined. Therefore, the electrons send that electron signal through the atoms, and when two bits hit electrons in sequence in space, they end up creating electricity. So that's a more complex argument about how electricity is really multiplying, adding momentum in a direction. So one electron moves in the right direction, another one up here moves in the right direction, another one up there moves in the right direction, and those all get combined as multiplying the energy. The energy adds. So when electrons add their energy in a direction, they end up creating what we call electricity. All right, so it says here, as the bits interact with different electrons, the electron momentum is combined and electricity is created, which is how we see a photon. So we only recognize photons based on the signature of causing electricity. Obviously, in the photoelectric effect, if we're detecting electricity, we're essentially using a clump detector. So we're saying the photon is the electricity when it really isn't. Okay, it was made by something more discrete. All right. To your specific question, photons do not transfer their energy. They quite physically push electrons. So the alternative theory to the conventional is photons don't bang into it and then stop and then the electron goes. No, the photon bangs into it and it just keeps pushing. It's like a little squiggly sperm, you could think about, like, you know. And it hits something and the big thing, and it just keeps squiggling, and it moves the bigger object. So the piece of the photon hits the electron and it pushes it, literally. And I will explain further. All right, to your specific question. Photons transfer their energy. They quite physically push electrons. The more bits pushing an electron, the faster it goes. So the more of those little bits of those little sperms that hit the boulder, the faster the boulder can be moved. The electron's mass being much greater than the photon's quantum bit mass, the speed of the bit is effectively reduced to the speed of the electron. So while they're pushing, so the little squigglies go the speed of light until they hit an electron, then they go much slower than the speed of light while they're pushing the electron. Until a whole bunch of them start pushing it, then they can get the electron to go pretty fast. Almost the same speed as the little squigglies. Alright, while it's pushing the electron, so it can only go as fast as what it's pushing can go. So until it gets what it's pushing up to a faster speed, it has to go a slow speed, and that's where you're consuming the energy of the photon. But you're only consuming it while it's pushing. As soon as it's free, it goes back to speed of light. This, by the way, explains the energy destruction that creates gravity. I put that in parentheses because, yes, it's perfectly consistent with this other theory also. So the bits of the photon never stop moving. They're just slowed down while pushing electrons. There you go. And when released from that obligation, they go back to their speed of light default. So the real takeaway statement, photon energy is never consumed. It is just borrowed. So all you can do is use a photon for a while, and then it's free again. The photon bit. The bit of a photon. And I just pointed out that I'm posting anonymously, and I can only respond to comments in this post, so I'll edit the post to respond to comments. But obviously there won't be any, because there's only 7 views. So it's sort of a pointless exercise. But anyway, worth noting. I mean, I went to the trouble to write it, so I might as well read it. So anyway, that's another project. I wish I could comment to these videos, but I mean these answers by these physicists, but I can't comment anonymously, which is really stupid. They let you answer questions. They let you ask questions anonymously and answer questions anonymously, but they don't let you interact with any of the comments anonymously, which is really stupid. So I guess I'll have to rephrase this question into another question and post that anonymously, and then see if somebody will answer it, and then I'll have to answer them by editing my comments. But anyway, it's just too stupid. So I think that's probably enough for this video. Yeah, there isn't anything else of use being provided by anyone regarding anything. So it's just the argument is all just, it's not to a high enough standard. I mean, Stephen Bro says silly things, but he says like he's somehow proven that my theories, all this theory, has somehow been debunked by him. I mean, it's just an incredible, preposterous statement that he's come anywhere close to proving one element to be incorrect. I mean, where's that concise proof? Show it to me. Show me where you proved anything critical. Anything you've proven that anything I said in that post isn't true. Yeah, no, he won't provide that evidence. All right. So, till the next time and such, and so forth and whatnot. Blah, 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 blah. Yeah, that's enough. I'm pretty sure it's enough. Well, actually, I should actually say the DraftScience thing. Yes, okay.